Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to local church. Super glad that you're here. How you feeling? Good. Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to see if I can get any kind of response from you at all. So there you are. Perfect. All right. Awesome. The 9 a.m. crew. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Michael. It is an honor to be here with you as always. Today we are kicking off a brand new three-part series called "If God Was Your Financial Advisor." Tagline: Three game-changing money tips straight from God. I'm pretty proud of this title. I'm pretty proud of coming up because it's intriguing, right? I mean, if you could pull up a seat next to God's big mahogany desk with all of his spreadsheets and calculator and ask him money advice, wouldn't that be cool? So, God, help me out with my money. In fact, let's just be brave here, okay? Raise your hand if there's even just a little bit, at least a little bit of room for improvement for you in terms of money management. It just give us I could save a little more. I could do a little more. Okay, just about everybody. Okay, very cool. If not, then what am I doing? You should be up here talking about this, right? So, yeah, I mean, all of us, we could probably use just a little bit of guidance, but there's a little bit of room for improvement for each one of us. So, a few weeks ago, as I was kind of going over the notes that I created for this series, I knew where we were going. I just didn't have a good title for it. So I'm sitting there thinking, what can I call this series? And all of a sudden, as I was looking at the notes, I realized, well, this is basically just like money advice from God. And I turned to Amigo, my dog, who was sitting right next to me, and I'm like, I got it, Amigo. What if we called it "If God Was Your Financial Advisor"? And he looked at me and he said nothing because he's a dog. But yeah, if he could have said something, I know. He looked in his eyes, he said, "Dad, you're a genius." What a great title. I'm like, thanks, son. Yeah. But then he also said something else. He said, listen, what would be even more impressive than the title that you created would be as if you actually followed the advice yourself. Because if you did, then maybe we could get one of these. Look at how cute. I I actually don't think that either one of us would actually want this at all. I showed this picture to Emily this morning, and she's like, "How did you do that? Is that AI? Did you AI Amigo?" And I'm like, "No, I just Googled Golden Doodle in a sidecar. It's not Amigo." But how cute. Anyway, the reason why I'm saying all of this and sharing this with you is because before we get started, before we begin with this whole thing, I just want you to know that we're in this together. All right. So although I have implemented most of what we're going to talk about, I have a long, 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 long way to go. Emily and I have a long way to go when it comes to managing money like God's way. So I am not coming to you as an expert by no means. So yeah, you can fact check me all you want. You'll probably see that I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's why we're here, because I want to look to God for what God has to say. Because I'm coming to you. We're here together as fellow Long Islanders who live in a very expensive place where money can be really tight most of the time, and we could use a little guidance, right? We could use a little bit of help. So if we could get some help from God, wouldn't that be great? So that's my hope with this series. Over the next couple of weeks, we're just going to look to God and ask him, guide us. Would you give us some advice on how we can manage our money well? Because I'm confident if we take God seriously, if we look at his advice and take him seriously, I am confident he will lead us to have a healthy relationship with money. Like, he may not lead us to have all the money in the world, but he'll lead us to have a healthy relationship with money. And I'm confident about that because, well, I've watched him time and time again with every other area of life do that. He's helped lead me to a better place in life. And I know he can do that for our money because a healthy relationship with money will lead to more peace, more purpose, and more joy. I'm just telling you, when you relate to money in a healthy way, you will have more peace, you will have more purpose, and you will have more joy, whether you have a ton of money or whether you have no money at all. Because the amount of money you or I have does not determine the relationship that we have with money. And so before we can get into the weeds of how to manage it and all of invest it and all of that stuff, we first have to check our heart with it and check our and check it up on what our relationship with money is like. Because if we have a poor relationship with money, or we have a misunderstanding in terms of what the use of money actually is, it could really derail some things for us, specifically our peace, specifically our purpose, specifically the joy that we get from life. And not only will a healthy relationship with money give us more peace, purpose, and joy in terms of how we handle money, but it will enhance all of those things in every aspect of our life. You know why? Because money is one of those rare things that impacts every part of us. You ever experienced that before? Like you may know somebody, or you may be this person, or like your mood is impacted by how much money is in your bank account. If it's payday, you're happy. Yes, I got money in the bank. If it's like 2 days before payday, you are so depressed. It's like, I'm broke. I have no money. Or you may know people who are like that because money has a way of impacting just about every area of our life. And so if we can have a healthy relationship with it, again, regardless of how much of it we have, it can increase and enhance every area of even in our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, and even our physical health. And perhaps this is the reason why Jesus spent so much time talking about money. Did you know that? Jesus spent more time talking about money than he did heaven and hell combined. Why would he do that? Why would he spend so much time, so much precious time talking about money when there's so many other things he could be talking about? Now, one of the things that Jesus claimed about himself was that he was God in a body. And that's not very impressive until you look at all the things that he did to prove that. All these miraculous things that he did to prove that I am who I said I am, the most miraculous being that he died and then came back to life after he predicted that he would do that. That's pretty impressive. So, if Jesus is correct, if he really did make all that happen, then he really is God. And so God had a lot to say about money management. But why would he talk about that? Is it because he was just trying to get all of our money from us? Like, let me teach you guys about money so that you'll give it all to me? I don't think so. That's what I used to think for a long time. Like, well, the church and God, they're all about just money. They're money hungry, right? But he's God. I don't think he needs our money. Like, I think he's got everything he needs. So why would he spend so much time talking about this? Well, as you look at what Jesus has to say, it becomes pretty clear that God doesn't need or want anything from us. He wants something for us. He spends so much time talking about this because he wants you and he wants me to have a healthy relationship with money because it will impact all of our other relationships. It'll impact the rest of our lives. And I think Jesus spends so much time talking about this because he also knows that an unhealthy relationship with money will lead to less peace and less joy and less purpose in life. So as a result, when you open up a Bible, if you were to look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, you will see it's riddled with money management advice. And I think that most of what you can learn could be summed up in like three big ideas. Three kind of big, broad buckets of advice that God gives us. And of course, there's like sub ideas within each one of those. But there's three really big things that God encourages us to do with our finances. And those are the three big ideas that we're going to be looking at in each part of this series. So he's going to tell us, as we look at those things, exactly how to win with money, regardless of what your money goals might be, or regardless of where you might be right now with money. But here's something strange about all of this. And I was thinking about this as I was kind of putting this together. I was like, you know what's kind of odd about this is the advice that we're going to look at is thousands of years old. Like some of it's been around for 3,000 years. So it's been available to us since before we were born. And yet, so many people struggle with money, right? So many people. Like you might be one of them. I might be one of them. Like there are people who still struggle with money, even though it's literally just like a few taps away on our phone. We can read this advice for ourselves. Why is it that people struggle with money so much when God has laid out the perfect plan for us? Well, I'm glad that you asked that question. And I'll answer your question with a question. Here's my question back to you. Has your life ever changed for the better simply by hearing someone's advice? Has your life ever changed for the better simply because like your eardrums vibrated at the sound of somebody sharing their advice? For example, how many of you got into perfect shape physically because you were told that to get into shape, all you have to do is diet and exercise? Wouldn't it be great if that's how it actually worked? Wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, all of us would have six-pack abs. We'd have like a lot less back pain. We'd sleep better. If all that it took was for us to just simply hear somebody say, you just have to diet and exercise. But that's not how it works, unfortunately, right? I love to learn things on YouTube. I think YouTube is like amazing. Like literally just have so much information at the push of a couple buttons. And about a year ago, I have a stationary bike at home, and it started. I could tell like it was breaking. Something was wrong with it. Something was off. And so I went to YouTube and I looked it up, and I found a guy who had my exact bike, and I watched him get on the floor and take off the casing and get into the whole mechanics of it and fix the problem. And so I learned how to fix the problem, which is great. I mean, I learned it so well that I could tell you how to fix the problem. But here's the problem with learning things. Learning Learning how to fix the problem doesn't fix the problem, right? Learning how to fix the problem doesn't fix the problem. Fixing the problem fixes the problem. Say that 3 times fast. Fixing the problem fixes the problem. Fixing the problem fixes the problem. Fixing the problem fixes the problem. I'm impressed with myself. That's pretty good. That's like a vocal exercise. I should use that. Anyway, fixing the problem is what actually gets it done. I could learn all day long. I could watch this guy all day long, but my bike is not going to be repaired until I get on the floor, I unscrew the casing, and I get in there and I actually change some things. Let me say it another way that's a little bit more relevant to where we're going. Learning what God says, well, let me get more specific. Learning what God says about money doesn't change your life. It won't. It's doing what God says that will change your life. Learning what God says about money will not change your life. Doing what he says will change your life. This is why at the end of his most popular sermon, what's known as the Sermon on the Mount, at the end of that sermon, as he concludes that sermon, which by the way, he gives a lot of money advice in that sermon, at the end of it, Jesus concludes by saying this: anyone, and anyone means anyone, you, me, anyone who hears my teaching, means it gets into their ears, it gets into their mind, they have a general understanding of it. Anybody who hears my teaching and doesn't obey it, it means they don't actually do it or apply it. Jesus says, you're foolish. If you just hear this and don't actually put it into action, it's foolish. It's like a person who builds their house on sand. You know, it's not a very firm foundation. As soon as a little bit of wind comes, a little bit of rain comes, a storm comes by, that house is going to come crumbling down. So it really doesn't matter how revolutionary the advice that we're going to look at is. If you don't take action, if I don't take action, if we don't actually do something with it, nothing will change. Nothing will change. People have heard this advice for thousands of years, and some people have benefited greatly because they did something with what they heard. But others, their life went on just the same because they didn't take action. Because this is just a fact of life. Action takers are difference makers. Action takers are difference makers. In fact, would you say that out loud with me? Ready? Action takers are difference makers. One more time. Action takers are difference makers. That's right. Every single person in this world that you respect and admire and look up to, you do so because they applied what they learned and they took action. Every person who has ever made a difference in this world did so because they took action. They didn't just learn something, they did something with it. And here's the good news. You can too. You can too. You can make a difference in your finances. If you're struggling right now, if you feel like you're underwater, it's just like, it feels so out of control. I get that. But you can do it. You can actually take action today and see a real difference happen if you just follow the advice of your Heavenly Father. Because at the end of the day, I don't mean this to sound insensitive, it's just true. Winning with money is really not that hard. Winning with money, managing money well is really not that hard. It's like super simple math, really. The hard part is taking what we already know to do and actually applying it and putting it into action. But I promise you, the actionable steps that we're going to take away from this series are so doable. I mean, they're so simple. I mean, God made it extremely easy for us, no matter how much of money we have or how little money we have. If you just do these things, if you just do these 3 things that we're going to talk about in this series, you will benefit. And you will get one step closer to more joy in your life, more peace in your life, more purpose in your life. Sound good? All right? Action takers are difference makers. So my challenge for you over the next couple of weeks, really over the next couple of months, is to actually apply what we talk about. No matter how hard it is, you got to do it. All right? Just try it. Even if it's just for, you decide 3 months, if nothing changes in 3 months, I'm going to go back to my old ways, fine. But at least give it a try. At least try to do something with what we learned today. So here's the first big tip that God gives us about money advice. I'm just going to kind of rip off the Band-Aid and then we'll break it down, okay? Tip number 1, God's money advice number 1 is keep track of everything. Super simple. Keep track of everything, meaning keep track of every single cent that comes in and goes out. which sounds a little ironic now to say that because did I hear that the penny doesn't exist anymore? So it's going to be hard to keep track of those pennies. But all right, at least every nickel. Okay, keep track of every single thing that comes in and every single thing that goes out. For some of you, it's super obvious. This is like, really? This is what it is? Because you've been doing this for so long, and I want to applaud you for that because it's actually not easy to do. So many people that I know who struggle with money problems, they don't do this, right? And probably because for others of you, you might hear this and be terrified. What do you mean keep track? I actually have to pay attention to what I'm spending my money on? That's a terrifying thought, right? Because that means you're going to have to look at what you spent money on last week and realize, ooh, that the girl math that I used last week, actually, it didn't really math the way I wanted it to. Now, is this a thing yet? Because if it isn't, it should be. Is there such thing as boy math? Because I absolutely think that boy math exists too. I know these guys in this room, you know that you do this too. You're like, honey, I got to buy this new drill. If I get the new drill, if I get this new saw, I'll be able to finish that project in the kitchen. It'll pay for itself. It's going to be great, right? We do the same exact thing. I do the same exact thing, and you know you're not getting that kitchen done. All right, that's boy math. But this is the problem with tracking our spending is we have to confront the fact that, oh, my girl math, my boy math, it actually didn't math the way I wanted it to math. It's tough, right? Now, even though we're looking at this piece of advice, track everything, even though we're looking at it first in the series, I don't think it's the most important piece of advice that God gives. Actually, I think there's one other piece of advice that's even more important, but we're not going to look at that till next week. So make sure you don't miss next week. But even though this is just the second most important thing to keep track, it's still extremely valuable and it will change. It will revolutionize your life if you actually take this seriously. So here's how God puts this in the Old Testament Proverbs. Again, if you're not familiar with the Bible, if you were to open it up, you'd see there's two major sections. The Old Testament, everything that happened before Jesus, and the New Testament, Jesus and beyond. So in the Old Testament, there's a little section of that book of that section called Proverbs. And Proverbs are they're like fortune cookies, basically. The fortune cookies of the day. They're like one-off sentences. They're just packed with a whole bunch of wisdoms or short sayings drawn from long experiences. So most of this book of Proverbs, there's not much narrative in there. There is a little bit, but most of it is just one-off sentences of all these jam-packed wisdom proverbs. Okay, so here's one proverb that's talking about money management. This is Proverbs 27, verse 23. We're going to look at the Good News translation today. It says this: look after your sheep and cattle as carefully as you can. Look after your sheep and cattle as carefully as you can, to which you might be wondering, I thought this was a series about money management. Why are we talking about farm animals? Which is a good question, right? Do you want to know what their currency was 3,000 years ago when this was written? Farm animals, right? It was their sheep and their cattle. And this is why the proverb writer goes on to say, look after your sheep and cattle as carefully as you can, because wealth. Wait, what do you mean wealth? I thought we were talking about animals. Yeah, no, your animals are your wealth. Because wealth is not permanent. Not even nations last forever. If he were writing this today, he might not say sheep and cattle. He might say, look after your credit card statements, your bank account, your Venmo balance, the cash in your pocket as carefully as you can. You want to know why? Because your money situation will not stay the same day to day. And this is just how the world works, right? Even nations have turnover. So your bank account will certainly have turnover. But you will not be ready to do something with those changes if you're not paying attention. You can't be ready to rescue those sheep if they're falling off of a cliff if you're not even looking at them in the first place, if you're not even paying attention to what they're doing. And then he goes on to say, what can be done when we actually do pay attention? When we actually do look after what we have. He goes on to say, you cut the hay and then cut the grass on the hillsides while the next crop of hay is growing. You make clothes from the wool of your sheep and buy land with the money you get from selling some of your goats. The rest of the goats will provide milk for you and your family and for your servant women as well. In other words, when you keep track of what you have and what you spend, you can make a plan that intentionally benefits you. When you actually keep track of, okay, here's how many sheep I have, Here's how many goats I have. Here's how many cattle I have. Here's the fields I have. And here's what's happening in each field that I have. You can make a plan that will benefit your life. You can decide, okay, what am I going to do with what I have? Because whether we know it or not, all of us are working some kind of plan. Do you know that? Like, you have a financial plan. Even if you've never articulated it, even if you've never written it down, you are working a plan. Just like I am working a plan. It may not be a very good plan, but we're all working some kind of plans. And our plans are either helping us or hurting us. Our plans are either benefiting us or not benefiting us. And I can guarantee you, if your plan does not include tracking, if it does not include looking after your sheeps, your goats, your cattle, your credit card statement, your bank account, your Venmo, if it does not include tracking, it is not helping you as much as it could. You may be fine with money, but if you're not paying attention to your money, it's not benefiting you and it's not benefiting the world around you as much as it could, because you and I cannot manage what we don't see. We can't manage what we don't see. We can't use what we have and then figure out what to do with it if we're not paying attention to it in the first place. So you got to keep track. You got to pay attention. You got to look after. Because one of the biggest benefits is it'll help you create an intentional plan. It'll help you know, like, for now, this field's going to be growing grass and we're going to harvest this one. And then we'll flop it next time. But there's another benefit to doing this. Another benefit to keeping track. When you keep track of what you have and what you spend, you can avoid buying things that you don't actually want or need. That would be nice, right? Imagine buying things and then realizing, oh, I didn't actually need that. I just kind of wasted money on this. It happens all the time, and you may be surprised. This happened to me recently. A couple weeks ago, Emily was out of town. I was on my own. And so I did what I imagine most guys do when it came to dinner time. I decided to just open up the DoorDash app on my phone. I'm not even going to try to tackle a dinner. I didn't even go to the fridge. I'm like, we're just going to order some pizza on DoorDash. It's going to be a great night. And so I did. I ordered some pizza. And as soon as it got there, I grabbed the box. I set it down on the counter. I'm like, I'm going to grab myself a nice seltzer out of the fridge to enjoy with this pizza. And I open up my fridge and I look inside. And what do I see? There's pizza in the fridge already. We had leftover pizza. I literally bought more pizza when we had some in our fridge. Why did this happen? Because I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't tracking what we already had. And you and I could be doing this all the time. We could be buying things that we don't even really want, we don't even really need, and not even know it. So when Emily and I started really taking this seriously, earlier this year, we really started to take this seriously and track every penny. I found out that we had been spending $40 a month on an app that neither of us knew existed. At some point, Emily, she signed up for some subscription for a trial and never canceled it. And all of a sudden we were paying, I think it was like $250 or something that we had paid over several months' time. And we didn't even know it because we were not tracking. So, how are you doing with this? How do you do when it comes to paying attention, looking after your sheep and your goats and your cattle and your money? Do you do this? Do you keep track of everything that comes in and goes out? And I like to add the really there because I want you to be honest, all right? And you don't have to answer to me. You don't have to answer out loud, but I think you owe it to yourself to really be honest with yourself. Like, am I really doing this well? Am I keeping track? Now, if you're like me, you may be tempted to think, all right, because I know how to track my money, I'm good. Like, I know what to do to know what I've spent, so that's fine. But you need to hear me clearly on this. Knowing that you can track your money and actually tracking your money are not the same thing. You realize that? It's like knowing that you can go to the gym. Knowing that you can go to the gym and actually going to the gym are not the same thing. Right? And you can even take it a step further. Like, I know where the gym is, and I can drive by the gym, and I can even look inside the gym and see what there is in there, but that's still not the same thing as actually getting your butt in there and doing it, right? Knowing you can track your money and actually tracking it are not the same thing. I need to actually track it. I need to pay attention to it. I need to write down every transaction if I want to make progress with it. And this applies, again, it applies to you no matter what your goals might be. Whether your goals are to pay down debt, to save for a house, to save for retirement, to save more for your kids' college fund. Maybe it's just to put food on the table. Maybe it's to save for a legacy. Like maybe it's to give more. Whatever your goals might be, tracking is what needs to happen to make progress. The starting point to financial progress is not making a budget, although budgets are great. The starting point to financial progress is not researching stocks, although that's not a bad idea. It's not even putting money into a piggy bank for a rainy day. It's so much simpler than that. It begins with just simply looking after your sheep and goats, just paying attention. The starting point to financial progress is tracking every penny that God gives you to manage. It's tracking every single penny. And here's how you do that, as simply as possible. You just look at every transaction that comes in, and I don't really care how you do it. Could be on the app on your phone. You could print it all out, whatever. And then you just create whatever you want to create, some broad categories. I suggest 5 or less, right? You decide, okay, I'm just going to throw some names out there, but you can decide what you want to do. Bills could be one category. These are like fixed expenses, rent, mortgage, water bill, electric bills. Then you have eating, could be another one. Groceries, eating out, snacks, whatever. Coffee goes in eating. And then you might have spending or shopping. So your Amazon purchases, TJ Maxx. What else do you guys like to go? Target's one, yes. Yeah, so that goes in under shopping. And then you could just have a miscellaneous for everything else. Or if you have a hobby, like this is my hobby spending, whatever it might be, just get some broad categories. And this is what it looks like to track. It's like, here's what I have and here's what I'm doing with what I have. Here's the sheep that I have and here's what they're doing. Here's the cattle that I have and here's where they're going. Here's what they're doing. Here's the fields that I have, here's what they're doing. That's it. You just literally look at your statement, or if you want, what's even better, I think, is to actually get a notebook, or you can just go old school with a notebook, or you can use a note app in your phone, and just when you make a purchase, you write it down. That was eating, that was shopping, that was hobby, whatever it might be. Or you can use an app if you want. But that's it. Track. The starting point to financial freedom, to financial peace, is simply paying attention. You got to start there. Just paying attention. And here's what's so cool about this. There is a lot of science behind why this works, right? There's a lot of science behind why this works. It's something called Pearson's Law. Pearson's Law says that when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured, performance improves. And this is true of all things, not just money things. It's true of like your professional life, of what your goals that you have. It's true of fitness. It's true of even faith, that when you measure performance, performance improves. This is why scales exist. You weigh yourself. It's the reason why stopwatches exist. It's the reason why the grading system exists at schools and on milk. Like when performance is measured, performance improves. I don't know, is that a thing? Anyway, isn't there like grade A milk or eggs? Anyway, I don't know. Quick side note. All right, so when it comes to laws of the universe, like gravity and such, the person who's named after that law isn't named after that law because they created it. Like Pearson didn't decide, I'm creating this and now it applies to everybody. It's called Pearson's Law because Pearson discovered it. It's named after him because he discovered what God has already put in place from the very beginning of time. In other words, Pearson's Law just affirms what God told us to do 3,000 years ago. Like Pearson's laws just say, hey, this is what will happen if you do this, because God made it that way. That to look after what we have is important because when performance is tracked, when performance is measured, performance improves. And this will apply even if nothing else changes in your money situation. It's really cool. Even if you don't make a budget, I think you should, but even if you don't make a budget, even if you don't, invest in crypto or get some fancy money app, all you have to do, if you just start writing down your transactions and categorizing them, your financial world will improve. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. For many of the reasons that we already talked about. right? It will help you make the best plan possible. It'll help you make the best plan possible if you do this, because you'll have the most relevant information that you need to create the right plan. All of a sudden, you'll start realizing, oh, I got a lot of goats in that area over there. I need to bring some of those goats back over here. My sheep are falling off the cliff right now. I didn't even notice that. We gotta get those guys away from there, that area, right? But also, another benefit of tracking what comes in and what goes out is that it helps you get better at not overspending, not spending what you don't have to. If you overspend a lot, you probably don't track what you're spending until it's too late, right? Until you get the credit card bill, and you're like, oh my gosh, how did this credit card get so high? And then you're afraid to even look because, again, the girl math, the boy math, right? So when Emily and I started to do this, when we really started to take this seriously back in January this past year, and I'm telling you this not to brag, and I'm telling you this not to boast. For some of you, you're like, that's not even a boast, but whatever. I'm saying this because I just want you to hear like a success story for us. Okay, we didn't get a raise this year. We didn't win the lottery. We didn't get an inheritance. Nothing changed with our money situation. Yet, by simply doing this, the three things that we're going to talk about in this series, by simply doing those things, we were able to save more than $15,000 more this year than we have in years past. And nothing changed with our money situation. Again, I'm not saying this to boast in any way. I'm just telling you this works. When progress is measured, or performance is measured, performance improved. It helped us to make a plan that worked for us to stop overspending and to use our money more wisely. Now, our lifestyle definitely changed, but we wanted it to change. We wanted it to change. Like, it was motivating because we were paying attention and we're like, oh, I don't want my goats going in that direction. I want everybody going in this direction, right? So this stuff really does work, and it does not take much effort. All you got to do is just track. So let me ask you a quick question. If you already do this, I want to encourage you, keep on going. I want to applaud you for what you're doing, and you've probably noticed the benefits of it already too. But if you don't do this, especially if you're a young person, all right, if you don't already do this, if you don't already track your spending, will you please try? Just give it a try. Will you at least just do it for the next couple of months? Don't just hear it, because that's not going to help at all. It will make zero difference at all if you walk out these doors and don't do anything. Do it. Will you actually try? Please do. Take God's advice seriously. Again, I don't care how you do it. Get an old school notebook. Use a note on your app. Get a app if you want. Emily and I used an app called Rocket Money for the first few months, and that was really helpful for us because it connects to your bank, it connects to your cards, and when you open it up, it just shows you what your transactions are, and you have to categorize it right there. You swipe to categorize. That was eating, that was shopping, that was my hobby, whatever. But I don't care how you do it. Track however you want, but just do it. I'm not asking you to make a budget. I'm not asking you to study stocks. I'm not asking you to invest in Bitcoin. Just track. Just track. And the good news is here, you don't have to be a follower of Jesus to do this, right? I mean, like if you're here and you're like, I'm not sure what I think about God, I'm not sure what I think about, that's okay. This is good advice for everybody, no matter where you are in your faith. You don't have to be a follower of Jesus to do this, and you don't have to be a follower of Jesus to benefit from this either. But if you are a follower of Jesus, I want to talk to you just for a second. If you're not a follower of Jesus, just hang tight, talk amongst yourselves silently. But if you are a follower of Jesus, let me talk to you for a second. Isn't it true that as followers of Jesus, as people who love God, we're devoted to God, we genuinely want to follow in his direction, isn't it true that as followers of Jesus, like, we manage what God gives us, we don't own it? Like, we believe that everything that we have is given to us by God. It's not ours. It's ours to manage. It's ours to steward, if you want to use like an old school word. So tracking, paying attention, looking after all that we have is really not even an option for us. Like, we're obligated to do this because technically this is not ours. Like, God has given us a responsibility to keep track of these animals and this field and this land, to keep track of this bank account, to keep track of this inheritance, to keep track of what we have. And we're called to use those things, those resources wisely. And we're called to use them in such a way that our needs will be met, sure, but that others will benefit from it as well. But we cannot do that. And we cannot do that effectively if we're not paying attention, if our eyes are closed, and if it's just complete chaos. So this week, will you please try? Will you please give it a shot? Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, will you consider leveraging Pearson's Law? that when performance is measured, performance improves. And just start paying attention and tracking, categorizing every expense that you make. I guarantee you it will change your financial world. And finally, I told you that I was going to be as practical as possible, and I really want to do that. And I realized I just don't have the time that I want to be as practical as I want to be. I remember telling Emily, I'm like, I put this whole thing together, and there's so much more that I want to talk about. How do I do it? And she's like, you can't. You don't have enough time to do this. I'm like, well, what are we going to do about this? Because I want to share with you everything that we know, everything that we've done. Not saying that we're an expert in this, but it's worked for us, and I want you to have that information. She had a great idea. She's like, well, what if we kind of put together like a optional workshop, like something that was in addition to the series, where we can really dive into the weeds of it all and answer any questions. And I was like, that's a great idea. So we decided to do that. We're putting together a workshop. We're just calling it Manage Money the Easy Way, because we've just found this to be so simple, because it's a workshop on how to get real results with money without complicated budgets, apps, or envelopes, because we've tried it all. We tried the apps, we tried the envelopes, we've tried the budgets, and the system that we found and that works for us is so much easier than all of that, and it has worked better than anything else that we've ever tried in the last 20 years. Now, just to be clear, the system really is just what I told you. It's tracking. But we just found a really great way to track and do the next two things that we're going to talk about in this series. So if this sounds interesting to you at all, if you could use maybe a little bit more time to process this and maybe even have an opportunity to ask some questions, then mark your calendar for Tuesday, December 9th, probably 6:30 to 8:30, I'm guessing is when we'll do this. Tuesday, December 9th, that's when we're going to get this kicked off. We'll literally answer any questions that you have, and it'll be a fun night. So all I ask you to do is just register for it, so we make sure we have enough seats and we have enough, resources prepared for all of you. Now, again, just to be super clear, you don't have to do this. And you don't have to do what Emily and I do. You can literally just go old school and write stuff down on a notebook. That will work. But if you're curious about our system, then come check this out. We are super, super honored to share that with you. Now, lastly, let me say this. You can do this. You can do this. I don't know where you're at with your money situation right now, but I know, just generally speaking, on Long Island, it's tough. It's tough. Money's tough here. Money's tight here. It's expensive here. We live in like one of the highest places to live in the world, right? Like I think the what's it called? The index is 147. Like the average is 100. Long Island's 147 to live. It means we're 47% higher than the average cost of living elsewhere. It's hard to live here. So, but I want you to know, no matter where you're at, no matter what your situation is, you can trust God. I know it can be really hard, but you can trust God. You can do this. He can give you everything you need to actually do this. You just have to do it. You got to trust him, right? You got to follow. Start tracking. Start looking after all that you have and trusting him. And finally, don't miss next week, because next week, what we're going to talk about then is even more important than today. It's the most important thing we'll talk about. So I'll see you then. Let me say a prayer with you now. Well, Heavenly Father, I want to thank you, as always, for your guidance, for your wisdom. Thank you that you have not left us hanging in any way, but God, your words have been preserved for thousands of years to give us the wisdom that we know what to do with whatever situation we may find ourselves in. And I know right now, it's probably a mixed bag. There are some of us who are in the room or some of us who are watching, and, money's fine. It's not an issue. But there are probably many others that it is. It's tough. It's a constant struggle, and it impacts not just our financial world, but it impacts our marriages, and it impacts our relationship with our kids, and it impacts our mood and our emotions and our thinking and all of life. And so, God, no matter where we're at today, I just pray that you would give us wisdom to know what to do with the wisdom that you've given us. And then, God, would you give us the courage, the strength, the motivation, whatever we need to actually do it, to put it in place. And I pray that as we do, you would honor that, and we would see Pearson's Law actually take effect in our life, and we would watch as our financial world gets better, because we chose to trust you and to listen to you and to do what you said. And I pray as a result, not only would our worlds improve, but God, that the world around us would too, that other people would benefit. And as they do that, they wouldn't look to us, but they would look to you for who you are and how much you love. And they would honor you. And it's in the matchless name of Jesus I pray now. Amen.
Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. And before you go, I would love for you to consider engaging with local church in 3 additional ways. The first is to fill out a Connect card. No matter where you are in the world, we would love for you to do this. It'll only take you about 30 seconds, and it's just an easy way for us to get to know you a bit more and to serve you better, and for you to get to know us a little better as well. Just click the link in the description to get started. The second way that you can engage with local church is by visiting us in person. If you're local and you don't regularly participate in a church community, we would love to invite you to join us every Sunday. Resources like this can do a lot for our faith personally, but Jesus teaches that God does something unique for our faith when we choose to gather corporately. Click the link in the description to plan your visit. And finally, if you've been positively impacted by local church in any way, would you consider making a tax-deductible donation? Content like this, along with everything that goes on around here, is only made possible by the generosity of people just like you. You can click the link in the description or visit localchurchli.com/give. So, once again, thank you so much. We hope that you found this content helpful and inspiring, and we're so honored to be a part of your faith journey.